I'm Sophia Borovick. I'm a wheelchair user. I've been chronically ill and disabled since birth, I'd say. And I've been a wheelchair user for about 10 years.
Why is it important to have diverse inputs in research?
I think it's important for research to have a diversity of opinion, or people from diverse backgrounds giving their opinion, because it can affect change and people won't necessarily think of everyone. So it's important to have quite a widespread viewpoint of people with different abilities.
Have you been involved in contributing to co-design or as a research participant?
I've contributed to research. I haven't done co-design, no, but it's been interesting. The limited experience that I've had with research, it's been interesting to see how it can be so different one to another, and realising what's good and what's not so good and what they could have thought of to improve. I have a tremor, and so I have difficulty writing. But often when you do research, they'll ask you to write on a post-it, for example, and then it'll be put up. But I was thinking, for me, it's difficult. So if rather than singling out one person, you could have everyone having an iPad or something digital which they could type on, or stylus use, or voice activation if you can't use your fingers. But that's one big thing that I've noticed.
What advice would you recommend to early career researchers to create inclusive settings when co-creating or conducting research?
I think it's important to really try and think of all disabilities, and maybe even people who got into, I don't know if you call it intersectional disabilities, so it might be neurodivergent and a wheelchair user, for example. Just simply give up for wheelchair users or disabled people to find their way to where they're going to go and do the research, for example. Planning out, sending them information ahead of time, how it'll be, creating a schedule of what you hope to get achieved in that session, so that the person is aware and knows at this time we'll have this, at this time we'll have that. And also potentially creating rest breaks as well, because probably you'll have people who'll need rest breaks during or in between.
In terms of your lived experience, what have you seen done well, or what has worked well for you in the past?
What works well is sending ahead of time a schedule of what's expected or what they're hoping to achieve. Also, what the building looks like inside that I'm going to end up going to, whether photographically or a video, that helps. People who are offering to make sure that you've got somewhere to go and rest in between for 5 minutes. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, I think that's it.
Is there anything else researchers should be mindful of when working with the disabled community?
I think actually sending out a form ahead of time, asking about specific things, like does the room have to be a certain way? Do you need are you allergic to anything? Do you need, in order to participate in the research, do you need to be able to type, or will that be okay? Or yeah, I think just in general a questionnaire, but that's very specific and giving ideas of what that possible thing could be.
Do you have any final tips or recommendations you would like to share?
Talking to disabled people rather than assuming you know what they'll need. And in general, there isn't really a wrong question as long as you approach it politely. I mean, I think often people will rather be asked rather than people assume, or you get somewhere and you feel like nobody's really thought about you, and you might not. People who are like me might feel they can't say, well, I put their hand up and go, well, actually, I need this, once they're there. So finding out ahead of time is quite useful. Yeah, I definitely think also another point is making sure that the people conducting the research have allowed enough time, because one of the ones I went to was it felt like they'd only allowed an hour when they probably should have allowed maybe 2 to 3 hours. And I don't know whether they got much out of it, really, because by the time you get in the room, everyone said, I'm this, I'm that, whatever, then it feels like it's time to one question or two questions is time to pack up. So I think allowing time and time and space for people to do that, yes. Also, when it's group work, one person on their own could feel embarrassed, awkward, whereas group you see other people and they might think of something and it might trigger something in your brain and go, oh, I agree, that would help, or that's a good idea. So I think group actually is probably a good idea, even if it is people, and actually probably people with different disabilities, I think.